At the beginning, everything was white. And then, in God's deepest dream, there was a spark of fertility. Pachamama was birthed in time and space. And the earth school, our home, was created. And the fertility goddess Pachamama opened her arms for our place to learn our lessons.
Hey, hey!
Welcome, Spiritual Mag. Sam Bell. Well, we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Dan Willis. Dan is famous as a whistleblower. Takes guts to be a whistleblower. And he was with Dr. Stephen Greer on the Disclosure Project back in 2001. That was 21 years ago. Can you believe that?
Yeah. I would say the title is more of a witness than a whistleblower because everybody's blown the whistle on extraterrestrial presence. I'm just one of the witnesses.
Yeah, but you were kind of like breaking an oath at the time, right?
Yeah. We were all breaking oaths, but what we found out is that the elements that have been operating illegally can't cite the rule of law against us, according to our legal counsel.
And nothing really happened to you negatively, correct?
Nothing to me, no. But some of the other witnesses have met with some, interesting circumstances that led to their demise, suicides, being run over and so forth. And we're continue to stand for the truth.
Yes. It's called courage. Literally, it's called courage. So Dan and I are both in our early 70s. And to try to put that into context, I was born in 49. Dan's much older. I was born in June. Dan was born in April. And in April 1949, blacks, by law, were separated from whites in northern United States and southern United States. And they were separated in transportation services, medical settings, recreational facilities, prisons, armed forces, and schools. And slaves had been freed, but then they introduced a lot of different laws. And so it was, at that time, it was called separate but equal. And actually, in that year we were born was Truman. And Truman appointed the first black ambassador from the United States, and he had to decline it because there was no restaurant in Washington, D.C. that would seat him. Big difference from today. So now, 67, what were you doing in 67, young man?
Yeah, I just graduated from high school in 67. And then, because previously in 63, they assassinated our president, Kennedy, and LBJ escalated the draft. And so my draft number was coming up. Didn't want to go to Vietnam. Didn't want to go there. And so I figured, well, I'll join the Navy,
Wise decision.
So I ended up with a high-level top secret security clearance in naval communications at one of the busiest military communication, actually the busiest military communication facility on the planet, and that's how I got involved because Navy ships were reporting extraterrestrial craft coming out of the ocean, secret reports going to Chief of Naval Operations. Later, I also served in combat action on the rivers of Vietnam, so it didn't really keep me out of the war zone. So that's what I was doing in those early days.
Did you have long hair back then and a headband?
Well, kept it under my sailor cap, you know.
So, 67, I was in Moscow and went to protest Vietnam. And,
oh, good.
Well, my old man was OSS, and so I assumed that I need to go fight the commies. But I thought, I don't want to shoot one unless they're really bad. And I went to East Berlin and went to Moscow, Leningrad, Kiev, and I found out that everyone wanted blue jeans. And everyone was listening to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And they wanted to be like Americans. And I found out we don't really need to go shoot these poor bastards. So I guess you learned the hard way and I learned the easy way. So I applaud your efforts. It took a lot of courage to do that. Spiritually, that probably changed you going to Vietnam.
It made me give an oath to myself to, if there's anything I can ever do in the future that could keep young men having to go off to hideous, false flag wars, which that was a false flag war on the Gulf of Tonkin, I will do that, and I almost feel like my going to Washington and testifying in some way, help contribute.
Yeah. Just to talk about that for just a moment, we'll get into it more later, but what happened after the Disclosure Project that took the Disclosure Project out of the media?
Well, in May of 2001, I naively, listening to the other testimonies talking about the bases on the other side of the moon, 57 different species, faster than light craft, President CIA directors being denied access. We have 0-point energy. We have the scientists which can prove it in the congressional hearing, which we were seeking, and so forth and so on. I was one of the biggest events in the history of the National Press Club, 22 cameras in the back row. Myself being an ex-ABC newsman, as well as a broadcast engineer back in the 70s, I thought, my God, I'm participating in a world-changing event. This is incredible. The people watching television, they're going to be asking all kinds of questions. All this is going to be exposed. But I naively did not know what Operation Mockingbird was. And so what they did, the media, was they used a limited hangout, which meant that they omitted all of the explosive testimonies and made it sound as though hundreds. I was one of 21 witnesses. Each one of us stated we're willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing. We were backed by over 500 military intelligence witnesses. Like, how many do you really need, right? If any of this information got out, it would change everything. But what they did was they made it sound like we wanted to have a congressional hearing on simply the reality of UFOs. And so, that's not going to gather anybody's serious attention. And so right after that, a lot of things happened. I toured across the United States in the major cities with Dr. Greer, thousands of people in the major cities, and the affiliates from the different networks that come in, and they all did what's called the giggle factor, made fun of it. And so I became aware that, wow, And then CBS wanted to interview me, and I said, I'm not doing this interview unless I can say we have the scientists that can prove we have a solution to get off of nuclear oil and coal.
Yes.
Promise interviewed me, and then afterward, the producers, I never had this happen before. They made me, the higher executives made me omit this out. And you find out later, the higher executives are the CIA.
Correct.
And that they've been keeping control of this for so many years. And so shortly after that, a media company out of Hollywood wanted me to write an article on the control of media in regards to the extraterrestrial matter.
Ooh.
And I gladly accepted. And so I've been researching for decades, and now I've got a pretty good handle on what happened back then.
On my trip in '67 to Moscow, I stopped at my uncle's house in Scarsdale, New York. He was the host of the Today Show, Frank McGee, NBC News. And he wanted to talk to me, but he didn't want to talk in the house. He wanted to go in the backyard on the other side of the swimming pool. So we moved some patio furniture to the back of the yard, and he discussed his experiences with Eisenhower in World War II. He was with Stars and Stripes, assigned to Ike, and he discussed the JFK assassination. Frank was in Dallas that day, and he used to sell newspapers in Dallas as a child. And he knew there was one paid phone booth in the hospital there, and it was right outside the emergency room downstairs. So he hustled into that phone booth and stayed there through the ordeal. And all hell was breaking loose. Most of the things were live back then. And NBC was like one of the premier news. It was ABC, CBS, and NBC. And Chet Huntley and David Brinkley were too distraught to go on the air. So Frank chartered a private plane, flew from Dallas to New York, and signed off the air at NBC that night. And he discussed with me, he shared with me, I was just in awe, like, oh my God. He shared with me what was going on in the emergency room when JFK was there, who was going in and out, and his, not confusion, but his feelings, his gut feelings that it's an inside job. So after that meeting, I went to Moscow, and then I was kind of thinking, wow, these people aren't really terrible people, and actually they're even less informed than I am. So I didn't have to go enlist, or like you did. Thank goodness my number was high enough that I could kind of wiggle out of it. And that's why I went into speech and language pathology, because everybody's walking around with these thought forms that have been electrically stimulated in their mind by somebody with a microphone on the other side of the planet. So it was a way to manipulate things, and it hasn't changed that much, has it?
Yeah, it's interesting. In 2017, the JFK files were released, which George Bush Sr. put a 25-year secrecy order. Of course, he was implicated in all that.
Yes.
And he was, hanging out at the book depository there in the front of it. And even the KGB knew that Lyndon B. Johnson was very much involved in the whole inside job on what happened with JFK. And the Byrne memo revealed that MJ1, Allen Dulles, was the one who set up the assassination directive, which got activated when Kennedy, 10 days before he was assassinated, requested the release of the UFO files.
Yes.
In a top secret memo. And so Eisenhower was well aware of so much of this, and he conveyed a lot. And Kennedy, with his background in Office of Naval Intelligence, was fairly well aware of a lot of this as well, and it's interesting. He visited the gravesite of James Forrestal, which he worked with Forrestal, and knew what happened.
Yeah. It was a terrible tragedy, I feel, for the United States at that time, because if Kennedy was able to release the information, things would be a lot different now. So now Walter Cronkite was the premier journalist back then, and second in line was Frank McGee. And Uncle Frank followed the 101st Airborne in Vietnam, and he made a program called Same Mud, Same Blood. And it was about the African Americans that were in Vietnam fighting for the United States, and then coming back to the United States and not being treated fairly. And Walter Cronkite credited Frank with bringing the Vietnam War to a conclusion, because Frank did the NBC Today show live every day, and he would bring the war into people's homes. And that's one of the major factors that brought the Vietnam tragedy to a conclusion. Later, now he was going to do that on live TV, the Today Show in the morning. He was going to bring in the background on JFK and Vietnam. And then he met a sudden demise, and then GE bought NBC News. And then they went from journalists to members of the Screen Actors Guild who were reading the news. So from that point on, there was a complete separation. And the Central Intelligence Agency and their contractors usually stay ahead of the game in terms of management of thoughts in the United States. And as media got better, and then we moved to digital, then neuroscience applications really stepped in. So many people today have very strong feelings about things. They don't know exactly why they have the strong feelings about things. But what has been done is sophisticated manipulation of people's thoughts. An example would be if I say to someone, what happened on 9/9? I go, I don't know. How about 9/10? I don't know. How about 9/12? I don't know. Where were you? I don't know. What about 9/11? Oh, they'll know where they were. They know who they talked to. They remember what they saw. So in trauma, as a speech and language pathologist, when you're in trauma, information that goes in, it's fixed. So
That's
you can do what?
Right. Emotions make it stick.
Yeah, so you can today, see replays of Building 7 falling down, nothing hitting it, and people still can't grasp that it was a giant con because of the trauma. It's really horrible. Well, that's behind us now. And the United States has gone from pretty vicious segregation to relative equal rights and equal opportunities. And we are just coming out of this certification of vaccine identification, COVID. And media played its part in that. They lied and people died.
That's right.
And you have a special rapport with a gentleman, Marcel. Can you share a little bit about Marcel?
You're talking about Dr. Marcel Vogel?
You got it. How did you meet Marcel?
Well, it happened, my journey to Marcel happened in 1977 when I had an extraterrestrial interaction. I mean, it's rare. I had these things, happen. But 1977 was the year that happened. And I had a Kundalini opening experience. And I find out decades later that exact same year, Dr. Marcel Vogel was having a Kundalini opening experience on a sacred mountain in India at the same time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. It really surprised me. So in this experience, I had an interaction with a being, which Elena Danan recognized as an emethor, which is one of the Council of Five, and they're a very benevolent race that give high technology. And what the being conveyed to me, projected in space a sphere, and one geometry. I didn't know what platonic solids were. I didn't know, sacred geometry and all this, and and it went into infinity, one geometry into the next, and over the decades, I find out this was not just a a metaphor of teaching. This was actually, I'm finding a lot of scientific evidence behind what he was saying. In fact, in 2001, I met with a lot of scientists Dr. Greer put together. One of them was Nassim Haramein, who he was showing me an energy device on his laptop. Everybody had horror stories about different energy things that they were doing. One had crystals, and SWAT team comes in, cleans out the laboratory, and so forth and so on. Anyway, he showed me this device on his laptop that was using geometry to power this light bulb, and it compelled me to share my story about that. And I described it in detail, and he said, "That's it. That's the structure of the matrix." So I got a little confirmation back in 2001. So anyway, back in 1977, this left a burning desire to try to understand what this was and what the geometry of the and every book I could get my hands on, I started to see these correlations, and I thought, oh my God, that's it. And so I heard about Dr. Marcel Vogel, and so I contacted him, and so I drove up from San Diego all the way to San Jose in the middle of a storm. I got there late at night, not too late, but in the evening, and I knocked on the door. He invited me in, had me sit down on this couch with this doctor, and he turned off the actually the first thing I said to him, I said, I'm fascinated about your work. I want to find out more. And he said, you're from another planet, aren't you? I said, I didn't know about that. Anyway, I sat down on the couch. He turned off all the lights and played classical music, beautiful classical music, for about, seemed like a half hour in the dark. And then we started conversing, and there was a knock on the door, and a woman came with her daughter, because the doctor I was sitting next to, he was working with about 24 medical doctors in the Bay Area, teaching them this technique of healing using quartz crystals. And how he got into that is a whole nother story. But
healing with quartz crystals. Healing with quartz crystals.
Healing with quartz crystals.
No medications.
Quartz crystals.
No injections.
Yeah, totally consciousness interface with matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be very disruptive to the healthcare business.
Oh, thank God. Yeah. It's so corrupt. Anyway, she brought her daughter because she heard he was doing things. She had this tumor that was on her ankle that's sticking out about a half inch. And in front of this doctor and I, he used the technique that he trained the doctors with, using the crystal, to go in, and did his procedure. And in front of our eyes, we actually saw the tumor dematerialize out of 3D. This left a huge lasting impression on me. That this man has figured out something. it's the key to understanding this matrix and consciousness and how it interfaces with, and crystals seem to hold a key to understanding the geometry of this matrix. That there's no, it's not just a coincidence that cultures throughout time and separated by not only time, by various continents and things, have all held these folklore beliefs about quartz crystals having sacred, attributes to them. But there is a scientific principle behind them that we're still exploring. So afterward, I saw what he was doing, and I traveled all the way to the mines. I drove from San Diego to Arkansas and got a huge batch of quartz crystals, and I delivered it to him. And so that were some of the first crystals that were cut. And he, out of that batch, he cut this one as a gift for me. It's a four-sided. He started out with a four-sided crystal. It came to him in a vision and a dream because, this is a long story short, he had to give a course for creativity to these 30 engineers at IBM. He was he had 140 patents. He developed the magnetic coating for hard drives, for computers, the liquid crystals for displays, the red and blue phosphors for color television. The man was a creative genius. IBM recognized that. And so these engineers were very, left brain. And so they needed to stimulate the right brain of his creativity. And so he thought he'd do something like, he read this article about Cleve Baxter and plant communication, and he thought it was garbage, and he crumpled it up, threw it in the trash. And then he thought, this might be a good experiment. And so for all the engineers to replicate it with a Wheatstone bridge hooked up to a split leaf philodendron. And he went to get a reaction from the plant by burning the leaf. And sure enough, the script chart went like that.
Yep.
And then the thought formed in his mind. The moment the thought formed in his mind to burn the leaf again, that moment, the script chart went like that. And so he said that squiggle changed his life. He had the kind of mind that once there was a question, he would be relentless in pursuing what the answer is to that question.
Yeah.
And so he was giving a lecture on plant communication. He was written up in the book The Secret Life of Plants. And the lady gave him a crystal, and he thought, this is woo-woo stuff. And basically his colleague at IBM had a back problem, and so he was studying pranayama yoga and found that when he pulsed his breath, through his nostrils, like that, and connected to the plant. I mean, he was able to connect to the plant like a couple of miles away from the laboratory with his colleague. And then he went all the way to Prague, Czechoslovakia, and was tuned into the plant, meaning the inverse square law of distance doesn't matter. It's instantaneous. He's able to connect in.
Yes.
And so what happened was he had a colleague at IBM had a back problem, and he pulsed his breath, and the back problem got relieved, and he was amazed. But he felt he wanted to make the crystal, which normally grows in nature in its various forms, but they all have a 52-degree angle, just exactly like the Great Pyramid in Egypt, which is a transponder in the matrix.
Oh.
And so he had this dream, and the dream gave him like this image of a dipyramidal crystal, like the tree of life, where you have a pyramid at the top, pyramid inverted at the bottom. In the Kabbalah, it's like the unmanifest from source, God, whatever name you want to give it, and then it comes into manifestation into the physical realm, which is the other end. And so he cut the crystal like that, so that one side was at a 52-degree angle, and the other side was at closer to a 60-degree angle.
And what happened then?
Well, it was similar to like a laser, where you have two mirrors, you have a ruby crystal, you photon excite it, and then it starts oscillating back and forth between the two mirrors. And each time it oscillates, it builds upon itself because it's in phase. In other words, each subsequent oscillation multiplies because it's in phase working with it. And so that's how a laser works, with 100% on one end, 99% on the other. The 1% is able to cut through steel, the light, because it's so powerful. So you can imagine what's between the two mirrors, And so Marcel always used to say to me that these technologies that we're working on are akin to those that we know in normal physics. In other words, what was happening within the crystal acts like a laser, you could say, so to speak. And recently we've learned a lot more from our off-planet friends. But anyway, so he continued to work with medical doctors, and he cut that one as a gift. I always remember going home on the plane where a football player was sitting on the seat next to me, holding his knee in pain. He just had surgery in it. And I said, "Look,
what did you do?"
I said, "I'm not a doctor. I'm kind of an experimental scientist. If you would like, we could try some, it won't hurt you, with some techniques I've learned, And so we did that. He got off the plane. He was pointing to me from his parents that he met. And he said, "That guy, he fixed my leg." But I didn't fix his leg. As you know, I facilitated him healing himself.
Well, I'm disagreeing with you there, Dan. You had the intention. Had the intention. That's the component that I think is extremely critical for people today to know that.
Yeah, when you facilitate another into healing themselves, the crystal acts, since our nature is holographic and we are multiple densities, our being.
Yes.
The crystal acts as a bridge between these densities.
Yes.
Because the higher forms the lower does not form the higher.
Right.
And so when you're able to couple into the higher, it's like you pull the rug out from under the manifestation on the lower by creating the healthy pattern. And as a friend says, the universe always tends toward perfection. In other words, and when you use love is Marcel used to say, it's like the glue of the universe. It holds everything together. It's like the structure of everything. And at the highest level, at the highest density, there's a greater connection with that which we term love. And so when you're working with the crystals and you're working with the intent to help somebody, to help the love for humanity, love for an individual, anything that has the love frequency with it allows it to
activate.
It allows it to transfer without dissonance into the higher densities.
I was an altar boy, and I would do 6:30 Mass. Marcel would come in. He was Mr. Vogel to me. I didn't know about crystals then. He would come in at the back of the church, get on his knees, and walk straight up to the altar. On his knees with his arms out praying. And I'm like, wow, that guy is special. He had a bushy mustache, kind of a wrinkly tweed jacket. And my father didn't
you
like
went to
him
Mass and he was there?
he would routinely be there at 6:30 Mass in the morning early. So I knew him as Mr.
Were you
Vogt.
living in the San Jose area?
Yeah, I was right, you know, he was on Morris, I was on Alameda, so I was a block and a half away.
Oh, wow.
That love component is important because that was in you and that was in Marcel, and that was what was amplified through that crystal. Also, your connection to the off-planet being was another connection, and you being a spiritual person. Now, right now, I'm going to introduce the trailer for the shows that I'm working on, which are documentaries about off-planet beings and unconditional love.
For best results, use a quality headset. Sit up straight, spine straight, hands down, palms up. Complete relaxation, full inhalations through your nose, total exhalations out your mouth.
That it is legal to require COVID-19 vaccines. We all want our lives to get back to normal.
Surge, surge, surge. I wonder what the answer will be.
When you're a good healer, it's not about you, it's about the patient, and it's about humility and just being to yourself, a bridge. These people are calm, and they do not tell you about their life or who they're in contact with and blah blah blah. You know, it's about you. So they will facilitate your activation.
There's somebody right there. At that moment, our clock began to tick.
Welcome back. Well, now we've got the good stuff. We've got the preliminary out of the way. Now we're going to talk about Elena Danan, Jen Han, and Thor Han. Now, you had an off-planet experience. Marcel had an experience, and I have had an experience or two. So let's share about Elena Danan.
Yeah, I didn't go off planet, but yeah, with the being that was Elena. She is well. I've been researching witnesses going back for a long time and looking at all these secret space program witnesses and comparing testimonies and what people say and what corroborating evidence. And I have seen so much evidence that verifies her claims that things like she wrote 110 different extraterrestrial species in her book Gift from the Stars, images of each one, what their planets look like, what their cultures are like, and all the detail. And one example is that She talks about this one race that there's 3 planets on Proxima Centauri. And it was 2 years later, NASA finally discovers there's 3 planets on Proxima Centauri. Thor Hands on Mars, there's a terraforming operation going on. He had just had a huge earthquake. So he emails Dr. Sal about it. Like the next day or so, the largest quake in the solar system is ever recorded on Mars.
That's a coincidence. Come on, Dan. That's a coincidence, you know?
Okay. It is very, very unusual coincidences. Another thing Thorhan says is like, watch Neptune. Everybody's going to be talking about Neptune soon. 1 week later, what happens? Everybody's talking about Neptune because in the south pole of Neptune is like glowing orange. Neptune's been going cooler and cooler and cooler, and all of a sudden it's heating up because these space arcs that are situated throughout our solar system, like the one down Lake Vostok in Antarctica, where it's 70 degrees warmer, they're heating up. And so just, you know, it's like very unusual coincidences where she has direct knowledge of things that are happening in our solar system.
I believe she describes herself as an emissary.
Yes. What happened with Elena when she was 9 years old? She was abducted by gray extraterrestrials working with reptilians that from the Nibu, and
those are the bad
Galactic
guys.
Federation. Yeah, those are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And the good guys, which is the Galactic Federation of Worlds, Thorhan Iredion, who came in with his partner Valmek. They came in and stormed the ship, and he took the reptilian by his neck. You know, it's like, so they rescued her, but what happened was they put an implant in her. And so it's a very dangerous procedure, but they had to repurpose the implant. And so what they did was they repurposed it to be a quantum communication device that's connected with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, that is a secure communication device that is very advanced technology. In fact, it's even in a higher density that's in her head. And she has graciously volunteered to be an emissary for them to share information. So
that's so heavy. How heavy is that? That's so heavy.
What's fascinating is that what Thorhan sees, it's almost like she's there. She can see and hear everything that he sees. And then he, in turn, can see everything that she sees. And so she invited me on the show. Normally I do shows talking about disclosure and illegal operations that have been going on and the control of media and all that and the history of that. And she said, well, you worked with Dr. Marcel Vogel in his laboratory. And I said yes. And so we started talking about my involvement with Dr. Marcel Vogel with the crystals. And then she said, well, Thorhan's, his younger brother, you know, Thorhan's like, he's been promoted to the higher command lately, but he's like a commander on board, starship. And his younger brother is going to a university in the Pleiades, learning how to terraform planets, or what they call star makers.
Well, let me stop you there. Let me stop you there.
Yes.
You just said some really, really heavy stuff. So people will be like, huh? So Elena is a human being who was kidnapped. Thorhan rescued her. He was on some giant ship of something. He installed a actual device in her head, so it's not telepathy. And
well, the Greys did that, and then the Galactic Federation repurposed it to be a communication device.
Oh, okay. That makes
So
sense.
it was a nefarious device that the Greys used for tracking that they had to repurpose it. And they apparently, I mean, their technology is so far ahead of what we can even comprehend.
And so Thorhan's younger brother, who's another extraterrestrial, is that correct?
He's from the planet Era as well. They're Nordic-looking beings that are Palladians.
So
and they're one race of many that are part of the Galactic Federation of Worlds.
So his younger brother is Jenhan, and Jenhan's in some university somewhere in another planet.
Well, they do field trips, just like schools. He was sending a message to me that he was with the Galactic Confederation. Now, you have to understand that the Palladians on the planet Era are thousands of years in advanced technology. But Jenhan was sharing that he was on one of the Galactic Confederation ships that have arrived in our solar system, and their technology is 20,000 years ahead of their technology, and he's just excited as can be because he's learning all kinds of new understandings of. And so, being a terraformer, you understand the matrix of creation. You understand how the planet has an interconnected web that consciousness is connected with, and the formation. He says that the tetrahedral fractal geometry of the holographic reality is basically the key to understanding the universe. But anyway, I don't mean to get off on that subject, but and so anyway, Jenhan Eredion, his younger brother.
Yes.
Elena says that he knows a little bit about crystals. So he says, maybe I can ask some questions. So back in April of 2021.
Yes.
Correction, 2022. I put forth some questions. This is to see, how he'd respond. Because I was very familiar with what was established and quantified in the laboratory. When Marcel left IBM, they gave him the electron microscope, and I helped procure some of the lab equipment like the spectrophotometer, and he has a full-on laboratory, and he was quantifying. He was a full-on scientist, and not just woo-woo stuff, but he was quantifying all this stuff. And so I understood a lot of things that were discovered and what Marcel knew. And so I was curious to see what Jenhan would know about all this. And so I got response. And Elaine and I were blown away by what he said, because it matched exactly what Marcel discovered in the laboratory.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so, I was looking at this information, and I was saying, oh my God, the consciousness, the geometry of mind, love, how it interfaces with us, and breath. And it's what they do over there on planet Era. They use the breath just like that, because, Marcel discovered that, like I said earlier, that the plant responded more greatly when the breath, not when you go like that. No, it's going like that. Pulsed. And you couple that with your conscious intention at the same time.
Exactly.
And so we decided to do a show called let's see, what was it called? Changing the planetary timeline with a crystal. And so what we did was Elena would read Jenhan's information, and I would read Marcel's information, and they would match each other perfectly in the show that we did.
What's the name of that show?
If you look on YouTube and go Elena Danan, you can find her DANAAN, or you go to marcelvogel.org. You can find links to that show there as well. And so what we decided to do is put this information that we have between Marcel and Jen Hand to practical application.
Whoa.
And so I wrote up something for a positive vision for the future, a timeline, what it would look like in the future. All the corrupt elements have been, dealt with, and the new technologies released, and the world is thriving, and all that. And so we had everybody visualize that, and then we had everybody take their crystal and have that in their mind, take a deep breath, and pulse it into. We had she has 110,000 subscribers. We had about 1,800 people live doing it. At that time, the Schumann resonance spiked, and it found out from Jen Hand that there's a definite connection with the brain waves of the people on the planet and the
How
Schumann
heavy is
resonance.
that? How heavy is that? So heavy.
And I did work back in the 80s with an amazing scientist that substantiated that. Oh God, his name slips me right now, but it's on marcelvogel.org. But he was able to measure the brainwaves of people around the planet, like shamans and things like that, and found out their brainwave was synchronizing when they were in their working state of consciousness. The left and right hemispheres synced perfectly together and increased in amplitude and resonated with the Schumann resonance.
Yes.
Anyway, Dr. Robert Beck. Thank you.
Right. Right. To stop you for a second. The Schumann resonance is the natural resonance of the Earth, correct?
Well, between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere is ionized by the sun's rays, and so what happens is it forms like a bell, you could say, Sam Bell. That lightning and things like that, it rings this bell. And there's a resonant frequency of this bell around 7.83 hertz that they dub it the Earth brainwave, because if you look at it, it looks almost identical to an EEG of a human brainwave.
But there's a component of the cortex that resonates at 7.83 when the individual's in a relaxed meditative state.
It's in the alpha range, and they found that is the frequency which the left and right hemispheres synchronize to each other. And the Russians knew about this. It was called the Russian woodpecker. They were over the horizon radar where they were heterodyning our 60 hertz grid. They're on 50 hertz. And so what happens when two frequencies mix together, you get the sum and difference of the frequency. And that difference was falling into a psychoactive window. And Dr. Robert Beck found out that there's a long chain cholesterol esters in the brain that have the sensitivity to like 1/100th of a nanotesla. That's like somebody waving a magnet about a block away. You can pick it up. What happens is there's a psychoactive window where anything below or above is ignored. And the brain, within 4 seconds, they did an MIT, a triple mu metal cage, somebody would change, a double blind, change the frequency, and the brain wave would lock on within 4 seconds. And so they were using it for warfare, and it was hitting in places like Oregon where people were running off the road and things like that. When the CIA's got a pin that they have that that if there's a hit, this is old school stuff, that it would activate, because it acts like a Foster-Seeley discriminator and like an FM radio, like you're driving through the mountains, and the FM radio will pick on one station and switch to the other one. The brain works exactly the same way. And so if there's a hit, in other words, you're getting hit with this frequency, which will cause your left and right hemispheres to desynchronize and cause spatial disorientation. You hit this on and it gives you a local field. And I experimented with this when I was working with the Naval Electronic Engineering Center. The captain, him and I were working on the satellite equipment. And I was making these oscillators that I could tune them down to 100th of a hertz, and I designed a circuit board and everything. And I had the frequency counter on period measurement rather than on frequency measurement. So I didn't know what the frequency was, and I accidentally put it on I won't say what the frequency is, but I'll put it on the frequency that causes the left and right hemispheres to desynchronize. And this Navy captain and I, who were working on the satellite for the Navy, the satellite communication equipment that we're wrapping up, and he can do this in his sleep. He's done it for years, right? He's trying to wrap it, and he's so screwed up that he throws his hands down to the side and said, "What the hell's going on here?" And I'm looking at it, and I look up the frequency counter, and it was a perfect double-blind experiment. I didn't know. He didn't know. And I looked on the frequency, and I was, oh God, I put it on that frequency, and I left it on that one. And it was a perfect double blind. So, showing that it works.
So to condense that in one sentence, tell me, is this relatively correct? You and Elena are holding Vogel cut crystals with intention. You're focusing along with 1,700 viewers, and the Earth's Schumann resonance changed. It had a spike at the exact time that everybody pulsed. So it means that we collectively, and it's called the Global Consciousness Project or something. They determined that the square root of 1%, there's 8 billion people on the planet. That's less than 9,000 people. They start this kindling effect of change through the collective mind. And so, and that's without a crystal. Now, with using a crystal, you're interfacing into a device that bridges through multiple. It's crystals are physical on multiple densities at this exact same time. And so it acts as a bridge. Water also acts as a bridge. Yes.
And so since April of last year, it's like over getting close to 80 pages now of questions because of the prime directive. I can't just say, Genhan, show me how to do this and give me all the details and explain it and give me images and everything. I have to, because of the prime directive, I have to ask a very specific question, and he'll give me a very specific answer back. But they've been authorized from the higher level of the Galactic Federation to answer all of my questions. And I'm fortunately able to share it. And now everything I'm working on right now with not only working with the crystals, with healing, with generation of what's called frill, which is like the life force of the universe, something that's very sought after in the ancient world. I'm very honored, to be able to share it with the rest of the world. And so, but it can only be for benevolent purposes, or else, like Genhan said, I'll be in trouble if
turn it off.
This is misused.
One of the interesting aspects that I've discovered as a speech and language pathologist is we don't think about our mouth when we're talking, and we don't really process where these thoughts are coming from. We just kind of open ourselves up and it comes out. Well, the way that human beings retrieve thoughts is by the pressure on the bottom of their vocal cords. So you'll notice you occasionally, as you're speaking, you'll stop and say, you're doing that explosion of air up through your respiratory system. And this is an aspect that people use to retrieve their concepts without really, you don't know where these words are coming from as you're talking now, you're just letting it flow. And that's your air pressure that's naturally coming out. And the pressure on your vocal cords is what allows you to retrieve those thoughts. So I suspect there's some connection between the subglottal air pressure and the matrix. Also,
well,
yes.
I was just gonna agree that the process of breathing, not only brings in oxygen and prana in and out to your body, but it also connected with a multi-dimensional transfer of information every time you exhale and every time you inhale. Yeah. It's like you see a beautiful sunset or a beautiful woman or whatever, it's a beautiful flower, it's beautiful, right? Or something that's caca, so there's this multi-dimensional transfer of information when we inhale and exhale. And when we Jen Hand would say it's like a surgical spike.
Yes.
That
absolutely.
It penetrates.
Absolutely.
It's precise.
Additionally, Marcel, I believe, was only motivated by unconditional love, from what I knew of him. And I think you would agree with that. So he's on the other side now. So now he's even in a better position to share information with you, because you have entrainment with Marcel on some level for sure.
Oh,
so
I wish he was still alive. He would be so thrilled. He had no idea that what he created with the 60 degree and 52 degree angle, 51.843 to be exact, is creating a double vortex that, here's a large one.
Yes.
This termination up here is creating a vortex. And this termination over here is creating a vortex, but they're going opposite directions. And they both meet in this area where they conjugate together. And what happens is, Marcel would have loved to have known this. He didn't know this. He started out with a four-sided crystal, and then he kept on going to more sides. Like this is an 8-sided.
Yeah.
And then they felt that the more spin, you have of a 16-sided.
Yeah.
The more of the spin is more of an amplification of it. But he felt like after 12, 16 sides, he said you have more sides than that, it's like it's not really that effective. And it's interesting, Jen Hand confirmed that. But he said that something that Marcel would have loved to have known, and that is that when he went from 4, 6, 8, going up 12 and so forth, he missed something. When he was at the 6-sided, if you cut the crystal, crystals in nature grow hexagonally.
Okay.
There's a hexagonal matrix. There's 6 sides. And if you cut the crystal in respect with the lattice structure, the key is the piezoelectric pressure that happens, that if you have multiple sides, you're not hitting exactly on the axis. There's the 3 axes.
Oh, okay.
And so when these 2 vortices come together, what opens up a wormhole into a singularity to connect into the matrix this is stimulated by the piezoelectric activity that's stimulated. Now you can do that by, it's a little one, by squeezing the crystal, and you can find out where this vortex center is by, if you take one angle and you were to draw a line, and take the other angle and draw a line, and where these two meet is the area where the vortex happens. And if you squeeze that, what happens is the piezoelectric stimulation opens the vortex. And so Jenhan has shared a much more efficient way to do it. It's a little more technical, and that is, if you take two pure silver electrodes, I have like two coins connected onto this crystal, and you put a signal generator on it, and you pulse it with a very narrow pulse at 20 hertz. What happens is the compression waves, what's happening is every time there's a pulse, every 20th of a second, the compression waves, they open up the singularity vortex. And this hasn't been publicly known yet, but it's kind of interesting. Jean-Charles, who's, been in the secret space program, very talented individual that knows how to teleport. He was doing a video editing of this his Japanese experience, and he's listening to this beautiful Japanese music, right? And and he's thinking, oh, Elena would love to hear that. I'd love to share that with Elena. And he's up in Quebec, Canada. Yeah. Elena's in Ireland.
Yes.
Elena left her generator on, which opened the vortex while she was feeding her cats in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
The cats perk up. They hear this Japanese music being played down the hallway.
Yeah.
And John Charles sent me the MP3 audio clip, and I shared it with Elena, and she said, yeah, that's it. It came through the vortex. So that's one of the things that we're going to be researching, is the possibility of using it for telepathy and much more. Anyway, we're exploring all kinds of different methodologies. By the way, if you go to marcelvogel.org, all the exchanges with Jenhan are there. You can find it.
Now, let me. Can I stop you for a second? You just shared with people that they can access higher dimensional information that they can apply to today in their lives, and it has to do with their own health and the quality of their life, and also the water.
And
the water that's inside of them. You're 60% water. So the crystal with your little silver and the compression and intention and willpower kind of exceeds time and space.
Oh yeah, well, this is kindergarten. We're just starting to scratch the surface. Elena and I are going to be doing a series on teaching on crystals, and so there's so much more yet, and it's ongoing currently right now. I'm sending out 22 questions to Jenhan to answer about the generation of frill, which can be used for irrigation for plants, because if you give the frill, everything has frill energy, like frill, virile, the Germans used to call it, prana, life force. If you give it to a plant, plant normally has frill. Everything in nature has frill, but when you give it an extra boost, they really excel. If a body doesn't have a high level of frill, disease sets in. If you increase that energy, and this has been measured, people measure the electrical potential in the body. If it's a low voltage, people get cancer and this sort of things. The immune system doesn't fully support unless you have enough. And that's why breath is important to build that energy, because you draw the frill into you. And he's given me an exercise. I've been harping on how to regenerate ourselves, so that and it's listed on the side, using this technique that basically you pulse your breath into your heart vortex, and the energy moving up through your chakras from your base to the top of your head is being recycled in such a way. And this is the ET yoga they use. And what it does is and he learned some of this with the new connections that he has, that it reconnects the hydrogen bonds in the DNA, so we're connected to the morphogenic field of the universe that will regenerate you. And so these are the new technologies that are going to, the old corrupt medical system is going to be, all the hospitals will be cleaned out of all this, and new modalities of healing where we use energy, and so forth are going to be employed rather, and I'm looking forward to that day. Because we're both getting up there, aren't we?
Would you call those consciousness technologies?
Yeah. This new modalities would be consciousness. It's funny, I was on a 1984 TV show talking about, just imagine in the future you can go into a chamber, and by energetic means, it would read and restructure, and nowadays we know about the med beds that basically tune through time. The holographic field that we are in has an element of time that can go back to and when I worked with Marcel, I validated that by working on the Delaware camera that was patented, that could definitely prove that it could tune forwards and backwards in the time by taking a drop of blood. And this instrument stood about 5.5 feet tall, and it would project the image into space, and there was a photographic plate with reflectors on it, and it would capture the image, a slice of the 3D projection. And like a woman was pregnant, right, 50 miles away, and because of, everything's entangled, right, the drop of blood acts as a witness for that person. And tuning through time, you could see the baby, progressing and regressing as you tune the time spiral backwards. It sounds like out of science fiction, but as we're finding out, a lot of the science fiction we've been fed is actually based on science that we have not been privy to in our education system.
Well, Dan, I have to say that I'm a connection to angels, and spirituality is what I'm about. I'm also a speech pathologist, so this is definitely the most important interview I have ever done. And 70 years from now, people will be looking back at this Dan guy and what he's talking about, and they're going to take things that you're talking about, terraforming, healing, instantaneous communication over time and space, as things that are just accepted. So I want to thank you, and you're going to be a field reporter if you would like, and we can do another interview and dive deeper in Marcel's technologies and the discoveries that you alone are receiving from Jenhan and Thorhan, or just Jenhan?
Thorhan's been relaying it. What he does is I'll send the list of questions. Elena will scan it with her eyes. He has a way of recording it somehow. He gave it advanced technology, and then he shares it with his brother. His brother gives him the answers, and then relays it back again. And so a new set of questions is about to be launched off today. And so the next time we do a show, we'll have even more information. We're crawling in understanding, but this is I'm extremely honored to be able to do this with Elena. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be on your show, and this what we're talking about is going to be the new normal in the future.
Dan, you and your lovely wife, Rebecca, are always in my prayers.
Appreciate your friendship always, Sam.
Okay. And if people would like to connect with you, what should they Google or search for?
I have two websites, thewebmatrix.net, and what we talked about is on marcelvogel.org. And my email's there, and if they want to connect and educate themselves on what's been discovered and what's being evolved.
Okay. Don't get snowed in. Say hi to Rebecca for me.
Will do. I look forward to the next time, Sam.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.